Hey everyone, Adam here. So last video I talked about kind of getting rid of things that no longer serve you and how kind of living with intention or minimalism, whatever you want to call it, can be hard work. And so I just wanted to give you an example of something in my life that I have decided that no longer serves me and that I'm getting rid of. So what am I getting rid of? Well, I am getting rid of my kayak. And this is an example of something that I don't want to say I have an emotional attachment to this kayak, but I have done a lot with this kayak. I still enjoy kayaking quite a bit, but holding on to this kayak and using this kayak just no longer makes sense for me. So I just wanted to take the time to kind of step through it, kind of show everyone my thought process, and just show what kind of led to this decision of getting rid of my kayak. So in 2004, my job was actually located right next to a river. So I've always been into canoeing, and at that point in my life, I've never really done kayaking, but it was something that kind of interested me. So in 2004, I made the move of buying a kayak and cross-country skis for the wintertime. So the idea was, instead of getting a gym membership, I was going to kayak in the spring, summer, fall, and in the wintertime, I was going to do cross-country skiing. So that's what I did. I bought a pair of cross-country skis for the winter and my kayak for the other seasons. Now, at this point in my life, it was perfect for kayaking because my job was right next to the river. So basically I would load up the car with my kayak. It was a low crime neighborhood. I wasn't afraid of anyone really stealing my kayak. So I would load the kayak up in the car, and after work, I would just immediately put it in the river and I would kayak for a good hour after work. And it was a fantastic workout. Now at this point in my life, I didn't have kids. So there was no I didn't have to be anywhere immediately after work. I pretty much had this freedom to do and allocate my time after work however I saw fit, right? There was no, oh my gosh, I got to go pick up my one kid from daycare or from school, or I got to go take my kid to soccer practice. There was none of that. So I had that freedom. So I got a good solid 4 or 5 years out of my kayak. When the weather permitted, I pretty much tried to kayak almost every day. And there really wasn't that much hardship, I guess, to load up my kayak and unload it because the river was right there. And then after this 4 or 5 year mark, I moved to New York City, and there was zero place to store my kayak in New York City. So the kayak actually went to my parents. They were going to hold on to it for me until I was going to figure out basically what to do with it. And just last year, my parents actually gave me back the kayak because I have room to store it myself. And then it kind of leads into this. What am I going to do with this kayak now? Now, since I've purchased this kayak, a tremendous amount in my life has changed. I have 2 kids. I have lots of obligations after work, picking up kids, taking them to their different practices of different sports. There is not a lot of time to kayak unless I can basically get my wife on board and be like, hey, look, I'm going to be gone for 2.5, 3 hours while you watch the kids, which honestly really isn't fair to her. Which brings me to my next point. You might be thinking, like, 2 or 3 hours, why would it take that long? Well, part of the reason now is that I am not right next to a river. My house is not on a river. So pretty much I have at least a 30, maybe a 40-minute drive to a place where I could put in my kayak. On top of that, loading and unloading the kayak on top of the car does take a fair amount of time. It's probably, say, around 15 minutes per load and unload. So, I'm looking at a commute time of maybe round trip, let's say 30 minutes or 40 minutes, basically like an hour, probably at the very least. And then I'm looking at another maybe 30 minutes with unloading and loading up the kayak 4 times. So right off the bat, I'm looking at an hour and a half, and I haven't even kayaked yet. And then let's say I kayak for an hour. Right there, that's 2.5 hours. Just to kayak for an hour. So the kayak no longer serves me. I've looked at other options. I've looked at maybe housing it somewhere on the river, and then I would just drive there and then just utilize it. But when I break things down, I may only be able to kayak maybe 8 times a year, if that. It doesn't. Just because I am going to get rid of the kayak doesn't mean that I am not going to kayak anymore. It just means that this particular kayak no longer serves me the way that it once did. Realistically, what I would probably do is if I did get the urge to go kayaking, I would just rent a kayak. That way I won't have to worry about loading or unloading, and I could kind of do it on my own time. And again, I'm not going to probably realistically be kayaking more than like 8 times a year. And if you cost that out, it's basically going to be, it's like, I think it was like 25 or 30 bucks to rent for an hour. So, I'm looking, if I go 8 times, basically, like approximately $160 to $200, for example. Now, I don't see my sons kayaking for maybe another, 8 to 10 years. And even if they did get into kayaking, I would probably buy a 2-seat kayak. So what they do is they make these 2-seat kayaks that you can actually convert into a single-seat kayak if you wanted to go just alone. So if I did ever purchase a kayak again, that's probably what I would get. So that way I could go with one of my sons if they wanted to go kayaking with me. And then if I wanted to use it, I would just convert it into the single-seat kayak. So yeah, at this point, there's no point in holding it. I don't want to pay for storage for it. It's sitting in my garage now. It's just taking up space, and I'm just not going to be using it like I once was. So it's time to say goodbye to Mr. Kayak. It served me well. I have no regrets utilizing it or purchasing it, and it's been great. But at this point, it's no longer serving me in my life, and it's time to move on. So you might be wondering where the kayak is going to go. Originally, I was going to potentially sell it. Come to find out, my mother-in-law actually was looking to buy a kayak, and this is a great starter kayak. So I'm just going to bring it up to her, and then she can use it, and it'll be great for her. So yeah, the kayak will actually go to my mother-in-law. They live about 5-10 minutes away from a bay, which is fantastic for them. So they can just put in the kayak and go whenever they feel like it. All right, so that's pretty much it on the kayak. Admittedly, this is probably a fairly boring video, but I just wanted to give you my thought process of how I kind of think through when I'm trying to determine whether or not I want to let something go. And this is just kind of my thought process that led me to basically saying adios kayak. All right, as always, if you found this video helpful or enjoyed it, feel free to comment. And as always, thanks for watching.